Hi, this is Jeff Cole, and in the next couple of minutes, I'm going to share a bizarre and powerful energy breakthrough, something first discovered by Japanese employees at one of the biggest recycling companies in the world that allows you to take all the plastic waste already sitting in your trash, your recycling, or at the dump and turn it into pure, high-grade oil. Fuel that can be used to heat your home, convert it to electricity to power appliances, you'll see how in a minute, or used as an emergency fuel supply that can slash your monthly utility bill by 60%, 70%, or even 80%. And the only building materials you need to make this are already sitting in your garage, the junkyard, or the local hardware store. The presentation you're about to see will very likely go viral on major news channels and also on social media, which is why I hope you'll stick with me through this short presentation so that I can show you a live demonstration of simple science, how this homemade oil extractor works, and how to set it up for dirt cheap in your home, no matter your age, health, or technical skill, and for less than half the money you spend on your monthly utility bill. Total, this easy and powerful solution to energy independence will take you about 2 hours to set up. Can extract oil from practically everything ranging from plastic bags, milk jugs and soda bottles, to coffee lids, plastic caps, and more, and help you save money on your monthly utility bills. Imagine how good it will feel to end the thermostat war in your home that has turned you into an evil energy Nazi. Imagine never having again to fight with your wife and kids about setting the thermostat too high or worrying about conserving energy. No matter what comes your way or what your neighbors have to shell out to the energy company, it'll all be possible by the time you finish watching this short presentation. So make sure you pay close attention in the next couple of minutes and get ready to have a goofy grin creep across your face the next time you hear your heater crank on the middle of the night, or one of your kids leaves the TV blaring for hours on end, because you'll know that all that energy is practically dirt cheap, and best of all, it's causing you zero stress or worry. Over 25,500 Americans are already using this exact same plastic to oil converter to get out from under the greasy thumb of big electric, big oil, and big energy. People like David Campbell in Arizona, who writes, "Hey Jeff, first of all, I really didn't think this thing would actually work. I'm not one of those environmentalist wackos, and all I really wanted was a way to get some free heating for my house. I'm sick and tired of paying utility bills, especially when there's so much free oil just getting tossed away in trash cans every single day. I started using this amazing invention, and I can't tell you how good it feels to be done with those crooks at the gas and electric companies." And Diane Corbett in Colorado, who says, "Dear Jeff, my wife and I moved to Colorado from California because we were tired of the government screwing with our lives. We live on several acres of land now, and this system that you've built is just crazy. It works so well that we're able to sell off our solar panels and put that money into gold and other precious metals. Now our house is completely protected against any government meltdowns or terrorist attacks, and I don't have to worry about getting sent off to some FEMA camp. Thanks." Those are just two of the many thousands of emails, letters, and phone calls that I get from people across the nation. Now, I know you're anxious to find out exactly how this simple generation works right now, and I can safely say that after you see how easy this thing is to set up and get working, you'll be absolutely furious that you ever sent a single penny of your hard-earned money to your gas and electric monopoly. So let me start by telling you who I am and how I know the secret of possibly going totally off the grid and doing it all with a few plastic bags and bottles. Like I said before, my name is Jeff Cole. I'm 54 years old and live about an hour outside Milwaukee, Wisconsin with my wife Donna. We have one beautiful daughter named Elizabeth, and she, her husband, and our grandson Adam live just a couple minutes down the road from us. The winters here in Milwaukee are pretty intense every year, and high energy bills just come with the territory. literally. Like everyone else, I've always just had to bite the bullet and pay whatever ridiculous price my energy company decided to charge us, even though it sometimes cost over $200 a month, just to keep myself, my wife, and our little Irish sheepdog Ernie comfortable and safe. But in 2013, after my mother died of pneumonia, all of that changed. On January 14th, 2013, I got a call from the hospital saying my mother had been brought in with pneumonia. She was having trouble breathing. Her body temperature was dropping and it didn't look good. My whole family immediately rushed to the hospital, and I was just able to get into the room, squeeze my mother's hand, and look into her eyes and say, "I love you," before she passed. It was such a painful moment. And all I could keep thinking about was, how could this have happened? I didn't even know my mom was sick, let alone that she'd gotten pneumonia. Why hadn't she gotten help sooner, or why hadn't she called me? Well, for a few days I didn't have any answer, but the next week, when I drove out to the house where she'd lived for more than 55 years and walked through the front door, I was shocked. Her house was frigid. I mean, it was ice cold. And everywhere I looked, the sofa, my mom's bedroom, even the kitchen table, there were piles of blankets, heavy down jackets, comforters. Something wasn't right here. And when I went to the thermostat to try and run the heat, nothing happened at all. So obviously I did what anyone would do and called the gas company. But after waiting on hold for more than 40 minutes and talking to 3 different idiots who couldn't even give me a straight answer, what I finally discovered filled me with an indescribable rage, probably the most anger I'd ever felt in my life. "We're sorry, but your mother was behind on her bill by quite a bit," they said. "We tried sending her a notice, but it's unclear if she ever got it. So we discontinued service about 2 weeks ago. Would you like to reactivate your service now? We'll just need your credit card information, or you could also send us a check." I hung up. It felt like the room was spinning. I couldn't believe this was the reason my mom had caught pneumonia, why she died, because her home didn't have any heat. She didn't have any money to turn it back on, and she'd been too damn stubborn to tell me or anyone else about it. So in a very real way, to my mind, this tragic episode always felt as if the power company had killed my 87-year-old mother. And it was all I could do not to break something or punch a wall in anger. Now I'll go ahead and skip ahead here, because I know what you're most anxious to hear about is the incredible invention I mentioned at the beginning of this presentation. You see, the only reason I shared the incredibly personal story you just heard is because it was actually what led me to make this discovery, and I'll explain how it came about right now. After talking with her estate planner, we realized that my mom had over $50,000 in debt. All of her credit cards were maxed out too, and when I added in the cost of the funeral, it meant I was going to need to shell out more than $60,000 to settle my mom's affairs. My wife and I were in complete shock, and as she started to tear up, I realized that the only way for me to get out of this hole would be to mortgage my house, and that's exactly what I did. With my mom's debts out of the way, I was left with a brand new monthly mortgage payment, something that I hoped to never have to do again in my life. And with the addition of my new mortgage payments, plus all of our other bills on top of that, we had to start cutting costs just to make ends meet. We were living on a shoestring budget, but still things were incredibly tight. As the winter raged on, our heating bill was by far our largest expense every single month, even though we were only running it when we were absolutely freezing. With every check to the gas company, I felt like I was paying the people who killed my mom. It was making me sick. And one night, as my wife and I were shivering in bed with our poor dog Ernie, I just couldn't take it anymore. So I got out of bed, wrapped myself in some ski pants and a heavy jacket, and headed downstairs to figure out a way to at least keep my house comfortable. I could stand living on a budget, but I couldn't stand having my wife suffer in the cold. And as I paced around my living room, I started making a list of my options. First, there were solar panels that could cut my electricity costs, which would be great. But as I looked outside, I saw the snow and realized that in the dead of winter, when our energy costs are the highest, solar panels would be pretty useless with all the storms. Plus, the initial average cost of solar panels is around $50,000. So there's no way I could afford them even before my mom's financial crisis, let alone now. Another option I quickly considered was the gas generator we'd hooked up to our home for emergencies. But I crunched the numbers, and running that thing 24/7 would have cost me just as much, if not more, than what I was paying back then. And I had to consider the fact that it was so noisy, and all the use would put a huge amount of wear and tear on it, so that if we ever did need to run it in an emergency, it might be unreliable at that point. With my mainstream options pretty much gone, it was time to start thinking outside the box. So I jumped online and started researching wind power. But like solar panels, I realized that they were expensive to set up and also unreliable. And I knew that there was no way my wife would want one of those ugly windmills in our yard. Plus, there was another problem, which was that even if one of these options could work, there was still the problem of time, because it would take weeks for me to get a quote, buy one of the units, have it shipped here, and then assembled and installed, and I needed something that I could start using today or tomorrow. But while I felt like I was totally out of luck and right back to square one, the next day I would discover the key to solving not just the problem of heating my home efficiently, but to my entire financial crisis as well. It started when my daughter and grandson came over to visit us. If you have grandkids, then you know how excited I was to see them and spend some time with them. And when my grandson Adam burst through the door like a lineman charging for the quarterback, it really brought a smile to my face. Adam was so excited about something that he had just learned about in school, and he demanded that I sit on the couch to hear what he had to say. Of course, I sat down, eager to find out about whatever it was he'd learned, expecting him to start jabbering about dinosaurs or lions. And instead, he pulled out a sheet of paper from his backpack and shoved it in my face. Well, the paper was a second-grade level fact sheet about plastic waste and recycling. And my first thought was that Adam's teacher was some kind of left-wing nut out to indoctrinate my grandson with her hippie, tree-hugging nonsense. So I pretended to read the paper while Adam, who'd apparently already memorized all the facts on the sheet, started buzzing about how enough plastic is thrown away every year to circle the Earth 4 times. How the average American throws away 185 pounds of plastic each year, and how 500 billion plastic bags get used worldwide every year, more than 1 million bags per minute. While I could care less about global warming and the environment, I had to admit that those were some very startling facts. And I also had to agree that it seemed like a lot of wasted plastic. Since Adam seemed to know quite a bit, and also because I just loved talking with my grandson, I asked him about recycling. Doesn't a lot of that plastic get reused and turned into other stuff? To which he shouted, "No, none of it does." But what about the recycling cans that I set out every week for the waste company to pick up? My grandson said that most of that stuff gets sold overseas or sent to a landfill, just like regular trash. I looked on the sheet he gave me, and sure enough, it said that 90% of the stuff you put in your recycle container doesn't actually get recycled. Well, a couple hours later, Adam left, but he made me keep the fact sheet. And while I normally would have just put it in a stack on my desk to glance at later, I couldn't stop thinking about all of the wasted plastic and how almost none of it is getting recycled. It seemed like such a huge waste, and I kept thinking that someone should try to do something with all of it. That night I couldn't sleep, not just because it was freezing cold, but also because I still hadn't figured out a way to cut my heating bills. And once again, I found myself downstairs in my ski clothes, trying to stay warm and racking my brain to come up with an idea. Adam's fact sheet was sitting on the kitchen table, and I started looking at it again. But this time I noticed something that I hadn't seen earlier when he was here. One of the facts on the sheet said that plastic production uses about 8% of the entire world's oil every single year. And it was the word oil that caught my attention. It actually blew my mind because I'd never really considered the fact that if plastics are made from petroleum, and that would include everything from milk jugs and soda bottles to plastic bags, toys, coffee lids, and electronics, then that would require a ton of oil to create. Well, that gave me a profound realization that would start me down the path to discovering the simple scientific process that eventually saved my entire financial future. You see, I started wondering if there was a way for me to somehow extract or harvest the oil that was inside plastic waste items. And if someone like me could think of an idea like this, then it probably meant someone else had too. So I started doing some research online to see if this was even possible. And it turned out that it was. In fact, there are some big corporations, mostly in Japan, that were already developing technology to convert plastics back to oil on a massive industrial scale, just like you saw in that CNN clip earlier. While it's great that big companies are taking advantage of this wasted resource, that didn't help me here at home, where I was wearing ski jackets and pants instead of turning on the furnace. So I needed to know if it was possible to build something like this on a smaller scale for personal use. All I found were some pretty fancy units built in Japan with automated touchscreen computers that cost a few $1,000s. But again, I didn't really have two nickels to rub together, so that was out of the question too. But as I sat there in the dark and noticed that I could see my breath because it was so cold in my own home, I decided that my only option may be to see if there was a way for me to make a cheaper system on my own that I could get up and running quickly. Well, the first step was to figure out how those big industrial plastics-to-gas systems actually extracted the oil out of the plastic, so that I could copy it on a smaller scale. As I dug around online looking into the science behind those big plastic-to-gas converters, I learned that the way they did it was by a simple process called pyrolysis. And while it sounds complex, it's pretty basic stuff. Here's how it works. Pyrolysis is simply the process of heating something up so that it becomes a vapor or a gas, which is very similar to boiling water. When you boil water, it gets so hot that the water turns into steam. And if you were to capture that steam and cool it back down, it would turn back into liquid water. Well, instead of using water, the idea with these plastic refineries was to heat up the plastic. And because plastics are made from oil, when the plastics melted and burned, the oil inside them would turn into a vapor, like air, and by capturing that oil vapor and cooling it down, it would become liquid oil once again. Make sense? Here's another way to think of it. If you've ever used a compost bin, then you probably noticed that they can get really hot inside, which is caused by all the chemical processes and bacteria that are breaking down your food and turning it into fertilizer. In the same way, these plastic-to-oil refineries use heat to break down plastic and turn it into oil. Here's a live demonstration of it done by a Japanese person.
外しました。この中にプラスチックを入れます。これが油を作る原料になるプラスチックですね。ちっちゃい装置のいいところはクラッシュしない。そのまま袋のまま形のあるまま入れられるんで油になるっていうことが分かりやすい。これでスイッチを入れます。これで今ヒーターの温度がどんどん上がり始めて、プラスチックが溶けて液体になります。液体が沸騰してから、ガスがここを通ってこの中に入ります。 でこれは水道の水なんですけど、この水の温度でガスが冷えて液体に戻ったやつがこの水の上にだんだん溜まっていきます。このできた油は混合油なんで、このままただ燃やすのには大丈夫なんですけど、これをさらに蒸留してガソリン、ディーゼルオイルとか灯油とかに分けて、それで使いますね。分ければ車でも使えるし、バイクも OK ですし、発電機だとかボイラーだとかストーブとか普通の、石油と同じだけの使い道があります。 1kg のプラスチックからだいたい1リッターできます。
Well, the science behind how these micro refineries convert plastics back to oil was starting to make sense. But actually, putting that science into action and making it work was a whole other project. And I would need some help in designing a system that could do this. Now, I've worked as a plumber my whole life, so my understanding of physics and chemistry extends to the pipes in your home. So I knew next to nothing about how plastics are constructed or how to separate the oil that was inside them, which is why I immediately called up my friend Ken Watkins. I've known him my whole life, and he works as a chemist for the food industry. He's the guy that helps big companies like M&M's or Skittles develop new flavors for their foods. He's probably one of the smartest guys I know, and I figured he'd be my best bet in trying to solve this problem. After I explained everything to him about my mom, the debt, my current financial situation, and this whole crazy idea of harvesting plastics into oil, he was more than happy to help me out, and we started meeting every single day after work to figure out a solution. It took us a week of late nights, lots of sweat, and some very strong coffee, but we eventually finished a working prototype. Here's how it worked. First, we grabbed a 50-gallon drum from the local junkyard, totally for free, because we needed a big chamber to put all the plastic in which we called the breakdown chamber. And it needed to have an airtight lid, which we also found at the junkyard. Second, we needed a heat source. So we used an oil-fired burner that we set up underneath the big 50-gallon drum. And the reason we wanted a heat source that burned oil will become clear later on. But you could use any kind of heat source, like a propane burner or even an electric heating system. Third, we put a hole in the lid of the drum and fit some basic plastic tubing over the hole. Once the plastic started to burn and decompose inside the drum, all of the vaporized oil would need somewhere to go. Fourth, we ran the plastic tubing straight down into a 5-gallon water jug that we also grabbed while we were at the junkyard. And we filled the jug about halfway up with plain tap water so that the end of the plastic tubing was underwater. Now, this was a very basic pyrolysis system, but we just wanted to be able to test our theory and see if it worked. You see, based on Ken's calculation about the oil content in plastic, he figured out that we should be able to harvest close to 1 liter of oil out of about 2 pounds of plastic, which is pretty good, especially if you consider that a typical car uses 4 liters of oil in the engine. So here's how we tested the system. First, we collected a bunch of plastic from my recycling bin and waited out until we had our 2 pounds. Then, we shoved it into the breakdown chamber, which was that drum that we'd insulated really well. After we'd sealed the lid on the top of the drum, we fired up the oil burner, and it only took about a minute to get piping hot inside there. As we waited for the plastic to get hot enough to burn, we kept a close eye on that plastic tubing coming out of the lid of the drum. And sure enough, a couple minutes later, we could see the smoky gas start to flow out of the breakdown chamber and through the hose. Well, now that the oil had been turned into a gas, it needed to cool back down so that we could turn it back into liquid oil, which is where that 5-gallon water jug came in. As the gas flowed out of the breakdown chamber and through the plastic hose, it got pushed out the hose and into the water where it cooled and became liquid. And if you've ever seen how oil floats on top of water, then you may be able to guess what happened next. As we watched our little 5-gallon water drum, we slowly but surely saw a layer of golden oil start to collect on the surface of the water. In order to collect the oil off the surface of the water, All we did was use a tap so we could drain only the oil without draining any of the water. Well, as Ken and I drained out the oil we just created, I had to laugh out loud because I couldn't believe that this crazy idea had actually worked. But there, in a little mason jar, was clean, pure oil that was ready to be used straight out of our little contraption. Just for fun, we poured a little of it into a metal tin and put a match to it. And boy, did it burst into flames, and it actually burned for quite some time. While all of that was incredibly exciting, and it really did seem like Ken and I may have discovered an amazing new way to heat my home, we'd only collected a half a liter of oil from that 2 pounds of plastic, which meant that our mini refinery wasn't working very efficiently. So Ken and I tinkered with the thing for a couple more days, made some adjustments, and came up with the second version of it. And once again, we gathered up 2 more pounds of plastic and tested the device. This time, we were able to collect a full liter of oil out of the plastic, which meant that we'd hit our original goal of 1 liter per 2 pounds of plastic. But now it came time to actually hook up this micro refinery to my house and see if it could really produce enough oil to at least help me cut my utility bill to the point that I could afford to heat my home comfortably. My hope was that I would be able to melt down enough plastic so that I could slash the amount of oil I needed to buy. By using the oil I made in my micro refinery to run all of my heating equipment, which included my water heater and my furnace, which both ran on oil. Well, there was only one way to find out if this mini refinery would work, and since I knew quite a bit about oil pipes from my job as a plumber, I got to work connecting my new micro refinery to my home's oil storage tank input. Once I was confident that it was hooked up correctly and safely, I headed inside to crank on the heat. There were a few tense moments as the furnace heated up, and then it roared to life. I could barely believe my eyes seeing the flames licking out of the burner, fueled by oil that I had just created minutes ago from melted plastic. It was absolutely unbelievable, and I'll never forget the sense of hope that I felt at that moment. I headed into the kitchen to see if our range was working as well. I flipped on one of the stovetop burners, and it fluttered to life instantly. And when I turned the oven on to 450 degrees, I was able to see the flames kick on underneath. My final test inside the house was to go to turn on the shower as hot as it could go. And as it ran, I headed down to my basement to check on my hot water heater. And just like all of the other appliances, the flames underneath it were absolutely roaring. But one of my concerns was that the oil we were making would be so contaminated and dirty that when it got burned up on my oil-fired furnace or water heater, it would create a terrible smell or a black cloud of smoke over my house. I headed straight outside to see if my furnace vent was coughing out plumes of hard smoke. But guess what? It was completely clean. There wasn't any kind of smoke or colored fumes at all, and it didn't have any sort of smell whatsoever. My next step was to start using this device, so I needed to get my hands on a boatload of plastic waste. After raiding my and Ken's recycle bins, we had plenty to get started on. So we began feeding more and more plastic into our micro refinery. And when one batch was done, we'd clean out the breakdown chamber and fill it again. After a while, our little burner that was heating the chamber began to run out of fuel. But one of the reasons we decided to use a burner that ran on oil was so that we could simply refill it with the oil we were making. It was absolutely amazing. We were using wasted plastics from our trash cans to bring pure oil straight into my home, while also powering an oil burner that we were using to create the oil in the first place. To be perfectly honest, I was completely stunned that someone like me was able to make this happen. But the next month, I nearly fell over from shock when I tore open our utility bill, because my little oil refinery had slashed my heating bill by 30%. and I'd only been using the thing in the evenings if I had time. But after seeing those kinds of savings, I decided that I would put some real effort in and try to get more out of my little oil refinery. But that meant I would need a consistent supply of plastic waste, which got me thinking about where in the world was I going to find a huge source of garbage and trash. So Ken and I went and talked to a couple of the local schools, grocery stores, restaurants, and other businesses, and just asked them if they would let me come by once or twice a month and pick up a bunch of their waste plastics. A few of the people we were talking to were curious about what we were up to, and we told them exactly what we were using it for. But for the most part, people were pretty open to the idea of us taking their waste plastics off their hands, especially after we told them about how most of it doesn't get recycled anyways. And from there, all I had to do was pack that 50-gallon drum, the breakdown chamber, with as much plastic as it could hold, then head back inside and wait while it dumped free oil into my home's storage tank. Once it was finished, I just cleaned it out and packed it full again. It took me almost no time at all, and I was getting pure, high-grade oil for nothing, while still being able to keep my wife, my dog, and myself totally comfortable. After living without heat for so long, my wife and I kept our home at a constant 68 degrees during the day, and at night, when we were sleeping, we let it drop down to 63. When my heating bill came the next month, I couldn't help but let this silly grin creep over my face, because all I owed was a measly $8. If I really wanted to, I could set my thermostat lower and probably get rid of my oil bill entirely. But it just felt too good to enjoy the warmth of a comfy home, so I left my thermostat exactly where it was and stopped worrying about my energy usage completely. Naturally, after seeing how successful this mini refinery was at my house, Ken quickly built one for himself and was ecstatic when he was able to cut his heating bill by 90%, just by using the oil he created from the mini refinery to power his furnace and his water heater. Now, I need to throw in a quick note right here, because it was after Ken installed one of these refineries at his house that he was actually able to figure out how to convert the oil we were making into unleaded gasoline for our cars or gas generators, which meant that if he wanted to, we could start turning wasted plastic bottles into the same kind of gasoline you buy at a gas station. But that's one way to use the gasoline we made, because we both started using some of the gasoline to power up our home generators to reduce our electricity usage. So not only were we heating our homes and running our water heaters on the oil we made, but we were also getting free electricity from plastic bottles now that we could power our gas generators. Of course, once all of our neighbors and friends got wind that we were using our waste plastics to hack away at the white-knuckle grip the energy monopolies had on us, they immediately wanted to know how we did it and how they could do it as well. Times are tough out there for everyone, not just me, so we decided that the right thing to do was to put everything we'd done into easy-to-follow instructions. And since our friends come from a variety of backgrounds and not all of them are experienced at building stuff, our goal was to put together a guide that was so simple that even one of our friends' kids could do it on their own. So we put together a bunch of detailed materials, instructions, and illustrations, along with some videos, and started calling this Backyard Refinery, the quick and simple way to turn waste plastic into energy. And here's exactly what's included with it. First, the Backyard Refinery includes a detailed list of all the materials and parts that you'll need, which amounts to 6 pieces total that you can get at your local Walmart for under $50. But remember, we actually found the 2 largest pieces, the 5-gallon water jug and the 50-gallon drum, totally for free at the junkyard, and you may be able to find even more of the required materials at your local junkyard, particularly the plastic tubing. Second, The Backyard Refinery includes step-by-step directions and detailed illustrations for every single step. Third, it also comes with a video of myself and Ken building an entire backyard refinery system, the same one we're using right now, from start to finish. These over-the-shoulder videos put you right there with us as we perform every single step in the build. Total, all of the parts and materials needed for the whole backyard refinery system will cost you less than $100. Well, we started sending out the instructions and videos to a few of our close friends, and then we waited. We didn't hear a word from any of them, which we figured was a good sign because it meant that they got their refineries up and running. But the next month, we were flooded with emails and phone calls from them, and every single one of them were raving about how they experienced massive drops in their energy usage. It was such a great feeling to be part of something like this, and it really did my heart good to know that this technology was helping people get through these tough economic times. But as is the case whenever people discover something incredible like this backyard refinery, the word began to spread around town and even in the neighboring states about this amazing device that Ken and I had built that was saving people 50, 75, and even 90% on their energy usage. We started getting more emails, phone calls, and demands for the backyard refinery. So we put up this website so that anyone across the country could get their hands on it. So far, over 25,500 Americans just like you have built one of these backyard refineries and are cutting the cord with their greedy, faceless energy monopoly, and finally getting to experience the freedom and joy of energy independence. Here's one email that we got recently from Henry Roundtree in Illinois. Greetings, Jeff. I lost my job a few years ago and my wife had to get back to work. That was a year ago, and I'm still struggling to find work. My wife's been under a ton of pressure to keep the lights on, and now that we have the backyard refinery, she's actually stopped grinding her teeth at night because she knows that no matter what, we'll always have heat, electricity, and hot water. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And here's one more from Charles Davis in Tennessee. Hi, Jeff. I was actually surprised to find your website was still up. I heard about your backyard refinery from a buddy of mine who already built his, and I just assumed that the black helicopters or a squad of G-men would have raided your offices by now. Anyways, I grabbed your materials as fast as I could and got my own backyard refinery up and running over the weekend. Just in a week, I've already filled my trunk's gas tank up with plastic I got from my recycle bin. With gas being so expensive, this thing already paid for itself. Thanks a million. And these are just a couple of the thousands of emails Ken and I get every single month. And they come from all over the country, from Americans of all walks of life. But they all have one thing in common. They're all getting incredible results from the backyard refinery. So after all of that, I want you to take a second and think about this. How good would it feel to never have to line the overflowing pockets of greedy energy companies, to not have to walk out to your mailbox with that intense feeling of dread and worry about your monthly bill, knowing that you could possibly take $120, $150, or even $200 of the money that you slaved away for and send it off to some corporation who I think could care less about you or your family's safety. Imagine how happy you'll be when you join the ranks of over 25,500 other patriots who are sick and tired of getting prices gouged every single year when it gets cold outside. Now ask yourself, what would you do if you could save some extra money every month? Would you stash it away for your retirement or your kids' college education? Maybe you'll just treat your wife and family to a wonderful meal once a month, something that you all can look forward to and remember forever. Will you pay off your mortgage faster and get rid of that debt sooner than you planned? So make sure that you really stop and think about what that kind of savings would mean for you. Because, of course, there are still other options out there besides the backyard refinery. Let's take a look at solar, for instance. But like I mentioned before, the price tag on one of those systems is astronomical, usually around $10,000 at the bare minimum. And if you decide to go for a do-it-yourself method, it usually is extremely complex and they don't even work that well. Plus, you also have to consider exactly how much potential sunlight your home will get during the dark winter months when you need it the most. Another option is to invest in a gas generator, but let's crunch the numbers really quickly. And just to show you how crazy this is, let's say that gas is only $2.50 a gallon. If you were to run that gas generator 24/7 to power your home, it would still cost you $220 every month. Not to mention gas generators are noisy enough to drive anyone insane. And they're not even made to run around the clock like that, which could cause it to break down quickly. But then there's also wind power, which forces you to install an ugly and unpredictable windmill on your property, or one of those biomass digester generators that'll stink up your whole house. Which leads me to this question. Why would you choose any of those options when you could have your backyard refinery up and running today and get your entire property powered by yourself as soon as tonight? Here's my promise to you. If you use our over-the-shoulder videos, the step-by-step instructions, and the illustrations that you'll be able to download in just a second, you'll be able to create an incredibly efficient, virtually maintenance-free, and powerful generator that could replace the current power source for your home. And given all that, you're probably anxious to know what you need to do to get started, and what the investment will be for the comprehensive video guides, the detailed materials and parts list and illustrated guides. Before I hand it over, let me be crystal clear. There isn't anything like the backyard refinery anywhere else. Beyond all of the technical skill and engineering know-how that went into producing this easy-to-assemble and spectacular home energy power plant, this is actually about much more than just reducing your bills. This is about your family's safety. You see, I never want anyone's family to endure what my poor wife and dog Ernie went through. I want your home to be always filled with love and peace, and free from worry, anxiety, and the stress and fighting that come with pinching pennies and conserving energy to make ends meet. I want every father and mother out there to be able to give themselves and their kids the things that they need and want, from basic supplies for meals and schools. Saving money every single year is a huge deal for most families, especially when you can do it all without having to shell out another penny to the faceless energy conglomerates. This is about taking action today so that you may stop worrying about your utility bills. Because after you take a few hours to get this backyard refinery up and running, it won't matter if gas skyrockets to $20 a gallon because terrorists blow up the pipelines in the Middle East, or if the electrical grid collapses. You'll have your very own source of oil capable of protecting you and your family from any future possible fluctuations in energy costs. Exactly 25,678 honest and hard-working American families have already invested in the backyard refinery at the regular retail price of $149. And in my opinion, that's a pretty fair price. But while I do think that $149 is a great deal, I also know from firsthand experience what it's like to be on a budget. And there are a lot of families out there with mom and dad working 2 or 3 jobs just to keep their heads above water. I remember the feeling of rage and humiliation when I had to mortgage my house, and how that forced my wife and I to keep huddled together in bed just to keep warm, which is why I'm going to cut the price of the Backyard Refinery by more than 75%. So instead of paying $149, which is what more than 25,500 individuals have already done, if you act today, and only while my website is still up, you'll be able to get the entire Backyard Refinery for just $49. So if you want to take advantage of this rare opportunity, you have to act right now and click that big yellow button below. Now, when you click that button, you'll go instantly to my secure checkout process where you can complete your order. It only takes a couple of seconds, and once you're finished ordering, you'll be given immediate and total access to your personal members-only area where you can access the entire Backyard Refinery system. You'll be able to watch every single one of the over-the-shoulder videos, check out the materials and parts list, as well as the detailed step-by-step instructions and illustrations. You can download all of the files right to your computer, smartphone, or tablet, or you can print out as many copies as you like. Here's something else that I want to do for you right now as well. I want the entire process of getting your Backyard Refinery up and running to be as painless as possible. And even though only 5 of the 25,678 individuals who built their own mini refineries have had an issue getting it working, you'll also be getting my personal email address after you complete your order. If there's ever even a split second where you're not sure what to do next, or even if you're curious about substituting one part for another, all you have to do is simply shoot me an email, and I'll personally work with you to answer your question. There's only one small thing between you and saving up money on your utility bill, and it's that yellow button below. However, if you're still feeling hesitant about investing in the Backyard Refinery, then I have one more thing that you need to hear about. And that's my 60-day, no questions asked, 100% money-back guarantee. Here's how it works. All you have to do today is just say maybe to the Backyard Refinery. Click the yellow button below, head through the secure checkout process, and grab your instant access to the entire system. And if, for any reason whatsoever, you're not absolutely floored by the results that you get, or even if you're only able to reduce your monthly utility bill by 25% instead of 75%, all you need to do is send me an email to that personal address that you'll get inside your members-only area, and I will instantly refund your entire investment with 0 questions asked. I've just made this a risk-free decision for you, because all of the risk is now on my shoulders, not yours. And I'm totally okay with that. I'm already saving thousands of dollars every single year using the Backyard Refinery. In fact, I think the exact amount I've saved in the last 2 years is close to $15,000. Now, you have a chance to join me and the other 25,678 families to secure your energy freedom. And you'll have 60 days to try it out before you buy it. That's a full 2 months. This presentation is about to end, and at this point, the choice is yours. Sure, you could click away from this presentation and try to forget what you've seen and heard. But imagine the sting you'll feel when your utility bill comes next month and you have to once again cut a check to some union-backed energy monopoly. And you'll have to keep doing that every single month, like tearing open an old wound for the rest of your life. Won't you be wondering why you didn't make the simple decision to click a button and try the Backyard Refinery totally risk-free today? Another option is to keep struggling with cutting back on spending and energy usage, always hounding your kids to turn the lights off and shut down their computers. or getting in shouting matches with your spouse about the thermostat and end up with them ignoring you the rest of the day after you yell at them. Wouldn't you like to end the constant worry about every second of warm air from your furnace or every drop of hot water coming out of your showers and faucets? If you want all of that to end starting today, all you have to do is click the yellow button below this video right now. Do that, and you'll get full and complete access to the Backyard Refinery system in less than 2 minutes. The over-the-shoulder videos, the illustrated guides, and the materials list. You'll get my personal email address for any questions you have. And of course, you're totally covered by my Platinum 100% no questions asked money-back guarantee for an entire 60 days. The decision is pretty clear at this point, but I can't click that yellow button for you. Go ahead and invest in the Backyard Refinery today and join the 25,678 rugged individuals who've seen the light that there is a powerful and simple way to dramatically slash your utility costs. I can't wait to see you inside your brand new members only area in a few minutes. Sincerely, Jeff Cole. Hey, are you still here? No worries. A lot of my clients still have a few questions after watching the presentation. And I want you to feel 100% confident in the investment you're about to make, which is why I'll take a minute or two right now to answer some of the most common questions I get asked. 1. How much money can I really save with the Backyard Refinery? This is a great question, but the answer will depend on a variety of factors, including how large your house is and what the price of oil and electricity is in your region. 2. What kinds of plastic can I use in the Backyard Refinery? All types of plastic are made using oil, which means that you can put any sort of plastic into the Backyard Refinery. Things like plastic bags, milk jugs, plastic food containers, plastic cups, even old plastic toys and scrap plastic can be converted in the Backyard Refinery. 3. What kind of maintenance does the Backyard Refinery need? One of the best parts about the Backyard Refinery is that it doesn't have any moving parts. Other than cleaning out the breakdown chamber, where the plastic gets heated up, and occasionally changing the water or filling up your heat source with fuel, you won't have to do anything. 4. Is the Backyard Refinery system hard to build? We purposely made the Backyard Refinery as simple to build as possible. There aren't that many parts required to begin with, but our assembly guide and the over-the-shoulder videos make the entire build process a cinch. Also, there's no need to rush through the build process. This isn't a competition, so you can feel free to move at your own pace. Plus, once you have the pieces you need, there's very little actual physical labor required to put them together. Total? You should allow about 3 hours total for construction from start to finish, and that's being very generous. Also, if you do happen to get stuck, feel free to shoot me an email to my personal address that you'll get in a moment after you get into your new members-only area. 5. What's included in the Backyard Refinery again? First, you get the entire parts and materials list, as well as substitute parts, so you only have to make one trip to your junkyard or hardware supply store. You'll get the entire step-by-step instruction guide and the illustration showing you exactly how to build the Backyard Refinery. You'll also get the over-the-shoulder videos that put you right there with us for every single step of the way, ensuring that you never get lost. You can move at your own pace and get your new Backyard Refinery up and running as quickly as possible. 6. How does that money-back guarantee work again? Another one of my favorite questions. Here's how it works. All you have to do is say maybe to the Backyard Refinery today. Click the button below this video and fill out your order information. Once that's done, you'll have instant access to the entire Backyard Refinery completely risk-free for an entire 60 days. That's 2 whole months. If at any point you are unsatisfied or change your mind about this, just send me an email and I'll refund your entire investment, no questions asked. 7. I'm ready. How do I get started? Simply click on the big button you see below. You'll be taken to my 100% secure checkout page where you can complete your order. After that, you'll get total access to a special members-only area where you can instantly stream or download the over-the-shoulder videos, as well as view or print the instructions and materials list. So, go ahead and grab your copy of this revolutionary energy independence solution right now by clicking the yellow button.